Good afternoon, and welcome to Weiser Wednesday, Episode 6. Today we're going to take stock of the organizational operating system. We're going to talk about it as a system. We're going to talk about whether or not it is fit for purpose and whether or not it's fit for the future. We're going to focus on 4 primary areas today, not covering everything, just for direction, decision-making, information, and working together. So let's talk about direction first. So when we talk about direction, we're really looking at 2 elements. Purpose. What is the purpose of the organization? Why does it exist? And the second part is strategy. What is the organization supposed to do? Now, when you talk about purpose, on one side, you can be about shareholder value. On the other side, you can be about solving a problem for a customer, meeting a need, building something. And when you think about purpose, ideally, it's something bigger than you. It's bigger than the organization. So if you think about, you probably heard the story about the bricklayer. And you ask 2 bricklayers, and you say, what are you doing? And one guy says, well, brick after brick, I'm building a wall. And you turn to the other bricklayer, and he says, I'm building a cathedral. The cathedral is that purpose. It's more engaging. It's something you can be more passionate about. Now, when you talk about strategy is about what you're going to do. It's about your choices. Now, on one hand, it can be very high level and not very actionable and not provide a lot of guidance. A company might say, our strategy is to grow. Well, that doesn't tell you a whole lot. Or it can provide more detail. Where's the growth going to come from? New markets, new customers, new products, different geographies. It's actionable. So it gives you some guidance on what you're supposed to do. So when you think about assessing your organization's direction, which one is it? And which one's most important is you think about getting ready for the future and a lot of the uncertainty we're about to face. So the second topic I want to talk about is decision-making. Now, decision-making involves a variety of parts of the organization. Decision-making looks at organizational structure. It also looks at how authority is handled within the organization. Now, that structure can be hierarchical, it can be bureaucratic, can be very heavy-handed, or that structure can be flatter and more accessible, more adaptable. That structure and decision-making can be based on rules that are hard and fast with very few exceptions. In fact, if you want to violate one of those rules or break a rule, you have to ask permission to say yes. You have to take it up the chain. Now, on the other hand, instead of being rules-based, you can be principle-based. So principles are more guides. They're more boundaries. So a principle might be the customer's right. So that guides the decisions that you're going to make. Now, in the case of Hyatt Hotel had one principle, and that was you had to ask permission to say no to a customer. And that says a lot, and that pushes down decision-making really to the front lines, where they're closer to the customer, versus having to go through multiple steps. Now, if you think about which one is fit for purpose, well, for Hyatt, it was about principles. It was about faster decisions. And if you think about getting ready for the future, you want something that's going to be more adaptable, more flexible, that's guided by principles. Now, the next topic I want to talk about is about information. Now, information can be a source of power. In organizations, people hold on to information. And historically, the more you knew, the more information you had, the more powerful you were. So a lot of things were based on need to know. There were people who had information, people who didn't. The ones who didn't were less powerful. The ones who didn't, folks on the front line, couldn't necessarily contribute to that information. They weren't listened to, they weren't heard, and it was harder for them to get access to information. Now, on the other hand, instead of need to know, you can take the position that everybody knows. because you never know who's going to need what when. So why not make it available so your folks can be more responsive instead of having to wait and not being able to make a decision? By sharing information, it becomes more of an equalizer. And when you're making it more open, you're allowing your front line to contribute information. What are their insights? What do they see that the rest of the people in the organization might not? So that accessibility is really, really important. So now I want to talk about how do people work together? So when people are working together, and you think about your organization, do you have silos? Is it really hard for departments to talk to each other? Very often departments can have different agendas. They don't cooperate or coordinate very well. Now, on the other hand, you can have an organization without silos. It's very easy to work across functions, for teams to share a common agenda, for teams to collaborate and work for the purpose of shared goals. And they share that accountability to get those goals done. Your organization and how people work together, it can be a closed system. So you can focus on what's inside your building. Or it can be more open where you talk to customers, you talk to suppliers, you're interacting, so it's a more open system. Now, we've talked about 4 areas, and each of those elements are linked together. Information impacts decision making, structure impacts decision making, how you work together can impact sharing of information. So we've talked about those 4 elements. Now, to learn more about this and to get your complimentary discovery call, email me at j@jweiser.com. Next week, we're going to talk about the strategy management operating system and how that works within the rest of the organization. Take care for now. Have a great Friday, and we'll see you next week.